This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform to build a beautiful online presence. Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Today I wanted to recommend to you a whole bunch of books to read if you're currently in a reading slump. So these are all books that are under 75,000 words. I almost said 7,500 words. Nope, 75,000 words. And they are books that are all quite fast-paced, fun, really engaging, and the types of books that I would want to read if I was currently in a reading slump. I tried to include books from a reasonably wide range of genres here. We've got some translation, some contemporary, some YA, sci-fi, fantasy. So hopefully there's something for everyone if you're currently in a reading slump or if you just want to pick up something that's like a little bit more fast-paced. But without further ado, let's jump straight into the video, and here are 8 short, fun, engaging books which will hopefully pull you out of a reading slump. The very first book I want to talk about is They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. This is a book I read a few months ago and I listened to the audiobook version, which was just absolutely brilliant. This is a contemporary sci-fi YA novel. It follows these two teenagers whose names are Mateo and Rufus, who on this particular day get a call from Deathcast. Deathcast is a company which knows when people are going to die, and so in the early hours of morning, Mateo and Rufus both respectively get their calls from Deathcast informing them that this is the day they're going to die. At the beginning of the book, Mateo and Rufus don't know each other, and the whole book is set over the course of one day. They Both Die at the End is tragic and sad in like a really beautiful, heartwarming, heart-ripping out sort of way. It's like a really sharp pain instead of a really dull pain. I don't know if that even makes sense, but regardless, I love this book. I found it really engaging, fun. I felt like when I was listening to it, I was getting through the story really quickly. There wasn't a spot where the plot dipped at all. I really loved getting to see how this little alternate universe worked and seeing how like the effects of Deathcast in a company that can predict effectively when you're gonna die and how that impacts like people in this world, and the little side snippets of other characters interacting while Rufus and Mateo are like sort of experiencing their last day. I really loved this story and I thought it was just brilliant, and I think it is a good, fun, fast-paced read. The book is in total 73,950 words, so it very much falls under the 75k category. It's a fast read, it's a really fun read. If your type of fun is getting your heart ripped out, I know mine is. Anyway, I love this book. I think it's brilliant. Please go read it. Book number 2 on this list, and I swear to God, not all of these are going to be sad books, but book number 2 on this list is The Traveling Cat Chronicle by Hiro Arikawa. This is another audiobook I listened to which made me cry my absolute eyes out, like to the point where I couldn't listen to this when I was in public lest people think I am a sobbing person. I don't know, I've cried in public that many times, like I really shouldn't mind anymore. Regardless, this book made me sob and I love it to absolute pieces. The Traveling Cat Chronicles is about a cat whose name is Nana. His name is Nana because his tail is shaped like the kanji character for 7, and he is adopted by a man whose name is Satoru, and Satoru is taking him on a road trip across Japan. There are all these really beautiful little snippets of like the Japanese countryside. There's this one scene when they're in Hokkaido and they're just like looking out over this flower field, and I loved that scene so much. Like I found it so very beautiful. But we get to see all these like little snippets and we get to meet all of these side characters as they go through their road trip. The book is narrated by the cat, so the whole voice of the story is the cat's voice. To begin with, I found that concept like a little bit trite. I thought it was going to be a little bit gimmicky and not great, but I genuinely loved it. Like I thought it was really good, and listening to the audiobook version was really great because the voice actor they got to do the narration like did a really convincing job of being like this sassy, like snide kind of cat. I thought it was really great. I loved the cat narrator. I loved the character of the cat and how that was brought out through the narration. I just love the story in general. It's quite short. This book is 52,055 words, so a pretty petite book. If you're an average reader, you'll probably read that in about 3 and a bit hours according to the reading websites. I don't know. Does anyone else use websites like this to try and determine how long it will take them to read a book? My attention span is a mess, so sometimes these like sites are completely inaccurate for me, but for like an average reader, it should take you about 3 hours to read a book like this. It's very short. It's very fun and engaging. Overall, just another good heart ripper outery book. I think that's the last sad book on this list I have to recommend you guys, but I really do love this book. Book number 3 on this list is a physical book I own, and this is The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. I just toppled my my little pile of books here. Oh no. This book wasn't even supposed to be a novel. This was supposed to be a short story, and this book is 5,460 words. So it's another one of like the smaller books on this list. This is a wonderful story about a man who is in his 40s who goes back to his childhood town and goes back and visits his childhood home. He's in town for a funeral, so it's a pretty sad reason why he's back, but he goes back and he sees this pond which is beside his house, and he remembers the little girl named Letty Hempstock who he knew when he was 7. And Letty believed that the pond next to their houses was as big as the ocean. And he starts to remember all of these like experiences he had when he was 7, and he starts to remember the dark, scary and sinister things that happened when he was 7. And so yeah, we dive into his 7-year-old perspective and like kick off the story from there. This is a really good contemporary dark fantasy. Like honestly, it's not that dark, like it's a little bit dark. I've recently started listening to the Sandman audio production and have realized how dark Neil Gaiman actually gets. So in comparison, this is not very dark. There are some adult themes in here, and I find it really cool because we're seeing these adult themes through the lens of a 7-year-old boy, because we have the 7-year-old narrator, and so this boy is trying to make sense of all of these things he fundamentally doesn't understand, and I found that dynamic really interesting. And so overall, this is a really quick story. It's very fast paced, it's very fun, and because it's Neil Gaiman, it's delightfully creepy, beautifully written, just so beautifully written. Before we jump on to the next book on this list, I just wanted to thank the sponsor of this video, which is Squarespace. Squarespace is a website builder which allows people to create dynamic, interesting, and beautiful websites with ease. You guys are well and truly familiar by now with the fact that I made my website through Squarespace. I genuinely love my site. I loved building it, and I couldn't be happier with how quick and simple it was to put together. Squarespace has loads of benefits which make it really easy to show off the things that you make and connect with the people who are visiting your site. Squarespace has powerful blogging tools so you can categorize, share, and schedule posts, and also has wonderful analytics features to help you understand the people who are viewing your website. If you're looking to make a website, head to squarespace.com for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/ChristyAnnJones to save 10% off your purchase of a website or domain. The next book I want to talk about is A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf. This isn't even a novel. This is actually an extended essay, but because it is bound, we get to call it a book, and therefore it is a book. 43,645 words, so it is quite a short book. And like all the books on this video are short, but it's probably one of the shortest books on this video. This is a book that I've spoken about to absolute death. If you've watched a lot of my videos, I'm really sorry. That is just a testament to how much I love it and how brilliant I think it is. This book is Virginia Woolf's meditation on what it is, or at least what it was, to be a woman writer in the early 1900s. She looks at the fundamental economics of being a writer, the money that you need to have and the financial support that you need to have in order to be able to write, to have the time and the space to write. And she also looks at how women are depicted by male writers. She considers things like what would happen if Shakespeare had a sister. She has this really beautiful imagery that's woven throughout the book. Virginia Woolf is such a beautiful writer, and I really, really love her writing style. I think it is just stunning. I will say though, however, if you're not used to reading classics and books that are a little bit more dense, this one will feel a bit more slow paced to you and will possibly defeat the entire purpose of this video, which is to provide you guys with a list of books to read that will pull you out of a reading slump, and so books that are like fast paced and quick. But regardless, if you're into classics, if you're not intimidated by a book that's a little bit slower paced, and by a little bit I mean like a bit slower paced, this is a wonderful short book which I really, really loved. It is non-fiction. The next book on this list is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. This is a book that is deceptively short. For some reason, I always forget that this book is like only 70,000-ish words. It is 72,645 words, which is quite a small book. It's a small classic. Again, same thing with Virginia Woolf, although a slightly different, well, I mean quite different, like writing style. If you're not used to classics, this book will feel a little bit slower to you than contemporary books. Again, if you're looking for fast-paced books, that might get in your way. However, it is such a beautiful story. This is the book that kickstarted the entire science fiction genre, which Mary Shelley wrote as a teenager. This book is a beautiful Gothic story. It is a epistolary novel, and it's written in letters. It's also a framed novel, so it's a story within a story within a story. I uploaded a video ages and ages ago where I spoke about Frankenstein very specifically, so if you'd like to watch that video, I will pop it in the cards. There are a lot of themes of man versus God and environment versus industrialization and stuff like that. I should probably tell you the plot of this if you don't know the gist of Frankenstein. It's a very, very famous story, so I'm assuming that you probably know it, but just in case you don't, this is a story about a man whose name is Victor Frankenstein, who creates a nameless monster while he's at university in Geneva, creates this like demonic creature that's very, very scary, and then the story sort of follows the implications of him trying to play God and create life from nothing. This story is also called the Modern Prometheus. That's the alternative title. The like linkage there is that Prometheus was the Greek god who stole fire from Zeus and gave it to the humans. And one of the things I really love about Frankenstein is the fact that it has just this really lovely natural imagery in it, specifically in the sections that are from the monster's point of view. I think the way he looks at nature and experiencing life is like really, really beautifully written, and I love it so very much. Like I really, really love this book. I'm in desperate need for a reread. I love it to pieces. Book number 6 on this list is The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. Now I did a pretty good job. I did say I wasn't going to talk about this book for a little while because I loved it so very much. I read it back at the beginning of the year, and then I spoke about it in like every second video for like several months, as it is a beautiful, fun, engaging little story, and it's only where is it? 73,950 words, so quite a short book. Honestly, it feels shorter than that because the story is so fast-paced and it's so much fun. This is the cutest book I've ever read. It is a Pixar film in a book. It is just colorful. I loved the experience of reading this because it was just so colorful and I could picture everything so like vividly and beautifully. In some ways it kind of feels like a middle grade, but it also feels like it's targeted towards adults. I'm not sure. I'm an adult and I very much enjoyed this book. So the premise of the book is that we have our main character whose name is Linus Baker. He lives in a world where the magical people and magical youth of this world are segregated from society. And Linus works for a company who is responsible for putting these children into orphanages. And so Linus works for the department in charge of magical youth, and his job is to go out to the orphanages and inspect them. Poor Linus is not enjoying his job at all. His life is very dull and grey and sad, and TJ Klune at the beginning of this novel does such a great job at painting this really grey, sad world of like working in a 9-to-5 that you don't enjoy, that I just feel like so many people can probably identify with. And then all of a sudden he gets a case to go to the titular house at the Cerulean Sea. He takes a train and suddenly his world becomes bright and colorful. He meets these 6 magical children and their caretaker, and the story follows on from there. I love this story. I think it is so cute. It's so colorful. It really did make me feel so many things. I love the depictions of love in this story. I just loved it in so many different ways, and honestly when I was reading it I absolutely flew through it. I couldn't put it down. I loved it that much, and so it is a perfect book to read if you're currently in a reading slump, if you're looking for something that's quite cute and fun, that's going to make you feel a lot of emotions. Book number 7 on this list is Strange Weather in Tokyo by Hiromi Kawakami. I read this book I think in last week's reading vlog that I uploaded, and it is quite a good, fun, short book to read. In total it's only 49,445 words, so quite a petite little book. Over the course of that day, my reading for this book was quite broken up, as you would have seen if you watched that video, but I think I read this in probably 3 or 4 hours-ish of pure reading time broken up over the course of the day. I found it really fun. I thought it was a nice, wholesome little story. Our main character is named Tsukiko, and she is 39 years old, and she is like going out to local izakaya and like drinking, and she meets her teacher who she had when she was in school. Her teacher is actually 30 years older than her, so he is in her 70s. No, he is in his 70s, and basically the story follows like their relationship as it develops. I thought it was, yeah, just a lovely, wholesome read. I felt like I got through it quite quickly. I love the little snippets of Tokyo and how we saw these little bits of imagery, seeing how like the seasons change. There were just a lot of really lovely, quiet moments in this book. So if you want a nice, peaceful, like calming read, a book that's set in Tokyo, I know that's the type of book that I tend to gravitate towards a lot. This is a really, really wonderful book, and I really enjoyed it. And then the very last book on this list is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. This book, I got a little bit worried because I wanted to put it on this list, but then I was like, this is the same author who wrote Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. this guy, which is actually 280,000 words. That's a very, very, very big book. This one, however, is only 68,000 words, so quite a bit faster in comparison. In terms of tone and pacing, this one feels like a much faster read. It feels like a lot more of a contemporary voice, and so feels a lot faster because of that. But I just love this story. When I read it, I felt like I flew through it. I really had to struggle to put it down because we were reading it for our monthly book club over on Patreon, and I try really hard to pace myself reading the book throughout the month so that I don't give people spoilers when I like update them on like how my reading is going. But this is a wonderful story about a man who lives in a house that contains the ocean. The man's name is Piranesi, and he is like documenting the house in journal entries. So this is another book that's actually an epistolary novel. I've only recently learned how to say that word without putting an extra syllable in it. Basically novels set in letters or journal entries or structural things like that. And so he is like documenting the house, he documents the tides. There are elements of this book that feel very academic because there's like lists of citations and stuff like that. There's like indexes and things which Piranesi has written down. And so I think this is kind of like a soft dark academia book. It's not set in a school or anything like that, but it sort of has the vibe of it. There's a lot of references to C.S. Lewis here, Narnia, stuff like that. The house is very labyrinthine, so there's a lot of like Greek mythology references. I love it so much. The sort of plot of the story kicks off as Piranesi, who lives in the house. There's only one other person who lives in the house whose name is the Other, and the Other is searching for this like great and unknown truth. And so the story really starts when Piranesi realizes that there might be a third person in the house, and this like whole mystery starts to come about, and it's just so beautiful. I love this book. I think it's a really unique story, a really, really engaging, like fast-paced story. I definitely recommend it to anyone who is currently in a reading slump, who wants something interesting and fun and fantastical to read. I love Piranesi to absolute pieces, and I definitely recommend it. And that was the very last book. Shit, that was actually a bit louder than I had wanted. The very last book on this list. I hope you guys found some books on this list that you want to add to your TBR. Please let me know if you have any short, particularly fast-paced books that you really, really love. I would love to hear all about them. Thank you very, very much for watching this video. And an enormous thank you to everyone over on Patreon for supporting this channel. If you'd like to become a part of our Patreon, we have a whole bunch of behind-the-scenes content, bonus videos, our monthly book club, stuff like that. There is a link in the description down below if you'd like to check it out. Take care, everyone, and have a lovely day. I will speak to you soon. Bye-bye.